I don't know if anyone will ever hear this. I hope you don't. I hope this message stays buried under a stack of incident reports, or deleted by some pencil pusher who thinks it's just another drunken ranger's midnight rant. But if you're listening, if you're even thinking about coming out here to our stretch of the Cascade foothills, you need to turn around. Go back to your car, your couch, your boring life, whatever you have. It's better than what's waiting out here. My name doesn't matter. You won't find it on any missing persons list, not yet. If you have to call me something, call me the one who should have left well enough alone. 7 years as a park ranger, for as a backcountry specialist, and nothing, not the snowouts, the missing hikers, the time we found a pair of kids lost for 6 days who didn't say a word for a week after we pulled them out, nothing prepared me for what happened last week. I keep replaying it all in my mind, every minute of that final night, the howling whine through the cedars, the static on my radio, and that feeling, the one nobody ever talks about in the training manual, that sense that the forest is awake and waiting. Maybe you're thinking I'm just rattled, or running from something else. God, I wish that was true. I wish I could tell you this was just some story about a bear attack, or a night gone wrong with a lost camper and too much whiskey. You'd believe that. Hell, I could almost make myself believe that, too. But it wouldn't explain the way the trees themselves moved, the song in the darkness, or what I saw in that old stone circle. It wouldn't explain the fact that I can't sleep with the window open anymore, or why birds stop singing when I walk by. Listen, I'm not a superstitious guy. Park rangers are the last defense against panic and tall tales in places like this. When some city kid says he saw monsters, we find him and walk him out. When old-timers mumble about the singing pines, we roll our eyes and change the subject. But there comes a point, a breaking point, when you stop laughing. Because the forest isn't laughing. And when the forest wants you gone, you know it. Maybe you feel it in the way the air cools behind you, or how the silence presses in a little too tightly when the trail curves the wrong way. Or maybe you just wake up one night and realize your boots are damp and muddy, and you have no memory of stepping outside. I should have left. We all should have left, but duty gets its hooks in you. You want to believe there's an explanation for everything, that there's no secret hiding in the woods that you haven't already seen. But I've heard things, a song with no words sung by no one, a voice on the wind calling my name, and the soft scraping of stone on stone where no human hands ever built a cairn. It sounds crazy, right? But let me tell you this, I was the skeptic, the rational one. And now I'm begging you, yes, begging you, to take this seriously. Because something is out here, and once you notice it, it notices you right back. If you're still listening, I'm sorry. There's a part of me, maybe the last sane part, that wants to rip the tape out and bury it under my pillow. But that wouldn't help. You can't bury something that's older and hungrier than anything you've ever known. You can't reason with it. You can only hide, and hope it decides you're unimportant. This isn't a rescue story. It's not a puzzle you can solve with enough clues, or a ghost you can lay to rest with the right words. This is a warning. If you hear the song, if you ever hear the song, I don't care if you're on the main trail or lost 60 miles from civilization. Don't follow it. Don't respond. Don't look back. My hands are shaking now. I should stop. I will stop. But first, I need you to know what happened. So you'll understand why I left what I left, why I did what I did, and why some parts of this park belong to something else entirely. If you're reading this, if you're hearing my voice, don't come looking for me. Don't come looking for any of us. Because the ones who go looking, are never the ones who come back. You'd think the woods would always feel threatening after what I just told you, but that's not how the forest works, at least, not most of the time. This wasn't some dark fairy tale setting. Not by day, not most seasons. When I first took this job, the national park felt like the safest place in the world, sky high above, 1,000 shades of green, cold creeks glittering under sun, mountains watching like distant gods. Even after everything, part of me still loves it. I have to start here, because I want you to understand, it wasn't all shadows and warnings. In the beginning, I felt more alive working those trails than anywhere I'd been. My days started early, sunrise spilling gold through the fog, black coffee, and the radio hiss for company. The ranger station was a clapboard cabin tucked into the pines, with faded maps pinned to the old cedar walls and a battered couch that must have seen a century's worth of exhausted limbs. I'd leave the radio set to Channel 5 and gossip with Donna while we checked the daily roster. She'd been a ranger here 20 years and claimed to know every inch of the park's 200,000 acres. She called me kid, though by ranger standards, I was already overdue to grow up. My co-workers, yeah, you should meet them. Doug and Paula, married forever, handled volunteer patrols and trail maintenance. Marcus was our easygoing, low-key crisis guy. He'd broken up more than one drunken off-grid party without raising his voice. Brittany was the new seasonal, all backpack stickers and energy drinks, compiling checklists with that brisk, city-trained efficiency. We joked about the little things, bear-proofing lunches, who could spot the earliest wildflower blooms, what Donna called the curse of Marker 42, the stretch of trail that always washed out or collapsed, no matter what. The feds blamed unstable earth. Donna blamed just old bones in old ground. Me, I just marked it on my inspection log and made sure the sign was clear, no entry after dusk. Violations will be fined. I never gave it a second thought. Locals respected us, mostly. Hikers and campers filed permits, and if they wandered into tricky spots, we guided them back with practiced patience. It was a rhythm, like the seasons. You fixed trails, filed your reports, drank a beer at the end of shift, and let the wild take care of the rest. I wrote up wildlife sightings in the green notebook: elk cut across Trail 3, bobcat scat near the East Fork, blue jays bullying the smaller birds at the feeder. There was even time for the mundane, tracking litter, giving directions, stopping kids from climbing onto rotting logs. We called it tourist herding. Some visitors joked about Bigfoot, others had real questions: do you hear the wolves at night, or is it true the old mines are haunted? I played along, tone between winking and sincere, always letting the silence do half the work. Most left satisfied. The woods aren't for everyone. Back at headquarters, we had our rituals. Chilly night on Fridays, trading patches and tall tales over cheap beer. Eventually, some of those stories found their way into protocol. Every station has the book, a spiral-bound, unofficial log where rangers pass on things you can't file with your supervisor. Pages filled with odd sightings and practical advice: don't trust the fog in October. If GPS drops, use the moss on the east side. If you hear singing and there's no one around, call it a day. None of that ever made it into the official incident reports. Just standard ranger folklore, meant to spook the rookies. If anyone believed it, well, they kept that to themselves. And yet, sometimes even city folks would catch on faster than you'd expect. That one chilly May morning, a woman in a red raincoat stumbled into the ranger station holding her little boy, both breathless. She said they'd lost the trail for only 20 minutes, but during that short gap, the forest went quiet. She couldn't quite name it, just that hush of having stepped somewhere you shouldn't. We logged it, gave them cocoa, sent them on their way. The boy pressed his nose to the station window, staring at the tallest black pine as if it were watching back. That's what it was, routine. Only, every so often, you'd notice a detail that didn't quite fit, a deer frozen in mid-stride as if listening, or all the birds on one side of the clearing falling silent at the exact same moment. Donna said it was weather. Marcus said it was just the magnetics. Most days, I didn't think about it at all. Until that week. It was a Wednesday, the backfield sodden from late rains, everything lush and a little overgrown. I was on file duty, checking forms, flagging late returnees, when Hunter, our wildlife specialist, breezed in, wind-chapped and muddy-booted. He laid a thick, sealed envelope on my desk. No sender. No return address. Just, Washington State Parks Incident Inquiry, confidential, printed on the front. Hunter raised an eyebrow at my expression, grinned, and said, "Maybe you finally got promoted, rookie." I opened the envelope after lunch, expecting more paperwork, maybe a complaint about an unauthorized campfire or a permit error. But what I found was different. Inside was a crisp typewritten report, location, date, time, complaint received at dusk by a family camping at the perimeter. The language was clinical, bloodless. Audio disturbance. Unexplained vocalizations emitting from timber north of ridge marker 42. Duration, 23 minutes. Voices identified as unfamiliar, followed by cessation of normal wildlife sounds. Ranger patrol dispatched, negative findings. Subject family advised to relocate camp. At the bottom, a second line, ink smudged, almost accidentally added, similar incident, refer to file 1974-11B. I blinked. We'd seen weirder complaints, foxes screaming can break into human-sounding wails, and the wind through a stand of tight trees will play tricks on your ears. But the way the language overlapped with the old, unofficial book tucked behind our couch made something at the back of my mind itch. Unexplained vocalizations. Cessation of normal wildlife sounds. I'd read almost the same words in the scribblings Donna left last May, in reference to a hiker who claimed the pines hummed after midnight. I set the report aside. There were always stories in the forest. You learn quickly which to believe, which to ignore. Something about this one, so formally documented and so familiar, stuck with me through the day like a thorn in a sock. I tried to brush it off. I poured a mug of stale office coffee, filed the paperwork, and told myself it was nothing. But that night, as I zipped my jacket and prepared for rounds, I glanced at ridge marker 42 from the station porch. Just an old wooden post, leaning toward the overgrown brush, the number half hidden by moss and late clover. The wind that evening was low, the kind that carries sound across the entire valley. I listened. I thought I heard nothing. Just the way silence folds around itself, waiting. Then Paula waved from her truck and the spell broke. I wrote the whole day off as routine, a ripple in the surface, nothing more than the ordinary weirdness that comes with living this close to the wild. But as I shut off the porch light, I realized I'd left that confidential report unlocked on my desk. The window rattled, just a little, and I thought, for a heartbeat, that I heard the faintest echo of something. A voice? Maybe. Maybe not. That's how it starts. Ask any ranger and they'll tell you, the forest hides as much as it reveals. In spring, as the snowmelt uncovers fresh tracks and new nests, the strangeness grows subtle claws. At first you think it's just fatigue, a trick of early sunrises and late patrols. But patterns start picking up, and the hush in the trees sticks with you even as you check the same paths you've walked 100 times. It began with a handful of odd complaints, nothing serious enough to bring in law enforcement, but enough that Donna started leaving post-its on my log. West Ravine, campers shaken up, reported strange laughter, 2 a.m. Lost hiker returned, said they saw themselves ahead on the path. Check for gas leaks. Marked deer with twisted antlers, unusual behavior, skittish at clearings. I kept telling myself it was explainable. People get nervous when the wind howls and the moon is right. But there were too many, piling up like brush drift against a fallen log. One group of college kids came in crying after a weekend backpacking trek. They said they'd found muddy footprints circling their tent at dawn, barefoot, oversized, and gone by the time anyone else looked. Probably just a prank from another group, but the way they kept peering into the tree line, as if expecting something to step out, unsettled me more than I'd admit. Then Marcus radioed me to meet him at Trail 4. When I got there, he showed me claw marks on a birch tree at eye level, too high for a bear, too sharp for any mountain lion we'd logged in these parts. The bark was still curling back, sap fresh, but the trail cam nearby had gone dead from mysterious technical failure. That was the phrase in his incident log, which he read with a perfectly straight face. Rangers trade in plausible deniability. But by late May, even Donna looked uneasy. Migrant birds haven't come back yet, she muttered as she counted swan feathers at the lake. Every animal seemed off. The elk no longer cut through the western meadows. Paula, who tracked them for 10 years, said it was the first May she hadn't seen a single flock. By the time the summer tourists arrived in clusters, backpacks, barking dogs, all sunburn and naive confidence, the staff had begun to share nervous glances. Phones lost signal in the central groves, GPS trackers went haywire, and one afternoon I watched as a flock of starlings shot into view, spun into a tight cyclone over ridge marker 42, and suddenly vanished, diving straight into the trees as though sucked down a hole. Still, things felt manageable, until we lost Spencer. Spencer was the kind of ranger everyone liked, cheerful, veteran, always complained about the instant coffee but never made a better pot. He was on night shift, monitoring the lower campground and bridge work. I signed off at 10 p.m., heard his boots crunching gravel, and even called out, "Remember your bug spray. Donna will kick your ass if you bring any more ticks back to the bunkhouse." He waved, flashlight beam bobbing off into the dark. The next morning, his bunk was empty. At first, no one panicked. Rangers sometimes take early walks, check on sunrise spots, vanish into the woods only to reappear with a thermos of tea and a camera full of deer photos. But noon came and no sign of Spencer. Donna called his phone, it rang and rang, then dumped her to voicemail. By sunset, every ranger was combing the main trails, calling his name. I took the northern line, the pines so thick I had to detour twice around windfall debris, branches snapped clean, as if something heavy had dropped through them. The forest was dense. Even the undergrowth was silent. I radioed every half hour, voice growing rougher, less official. At the edge of a small crook, I found his clipboard lying in the mud. No sign of a struggle, just a careful place, as if someone had set it down. On the back was a page from the unofficial logbook, torn out and scrawled with a message in his neat script. "If you follow the song, don't stop. It's not meant for us." My skin prickled, scalp crawling as I reread the note. The song. I listened, straining for any kind of melody, just the wind scraping needles, the shift of branches, my own heartbeat. I called again for Spencer, nothing but static, like a TV turned far too loud in a house you thought was empty. Search teams went out at dawn. I joined Marcus along the ridge trail. The place looked the same, but nothing felt safe, shadow and sunlight tangled together, the forest deeper and older than I ever wanted to admit. We found a half-faded marking scratched into a pine trunk, 3 overlapping triangles, just a little too symmetrical to be random, not from any surveyor or hiker I'd known. Marcus tapped it with his pen, shrugged, and said, "Teenagers, probably." But I saw the tightness in his face, the way he marked the spot carefully in his notebook and didn't linger. In the days that followed, radio chatter grew tense. Every noise at night seemed to come from just past the porch, just outside the circle of our porch light. A lost hiker stumbled into the station after midnight, wide-eyed, shivering, and unable to say his name at first. Kept repeating the same phrase under his breath, "It's behind the trees." It wants, but what it wanted was never finished. We posted flyers, coordinated with sheriff's deputies, called Spencer's wife in Tacoma. The official story was, "Missing person in dense terrain," but none of us believed he'd just wandered off. I replayed the moment his flashlight beam vanished at the edge of the lot. I ran my thumbs over the note again and again, the pen trembling between letters as if Spencer had stopped writing just long enough to listen for something, whatever he'd heard, or thought he'd heard. That was the first time I started waking suddenly at night, certain I'd heard someone knocking on the bunkhouse porch. Always a soft, dragging pattern, 3 knocks, then silence. Once, I thought I caught the whiff of wood smoke and something older, sour, like turned earth. I got up and checked the porch every night for a week. Never anything but wind and darkness. Yet I could swear the air itself had changed, just a touch colder, slower, as though the forest were drawing a deep and patient breath. By week's end, our search logs were full of oddities, disappeared footpaths, static bursts on the radio, brief, unexplainable chills in hollows that should have been warm. The logging trucks that used to rumble by the service road after midnight now idled at the far lot, refusing to cut through after sunset. Donna finally said, "You feel it too, don't you? It's always worse before the rain." Little by little, it all fell into a pattern. But it wasn't a pattern I recognized or wanted to. The forest seemed to be shifting, pushing us away from something, somewhere it wanted left alone. None of us said it directly, but we all started making our rounds a little earlier, knocking off a little sooner, staying in pairs after dark. And through it all, I kept the note, "If you follow the song, don't stop," folded in my chest pocket. Something was calling out there. And we'd only just begun to hear it. I told myself it was just the strain, grief, frustration, too many nights without proper sleep. And yet every day after Spencer vanished, the woods felt more foreign, as though paths I once knew by heart had shifted an inch to the left when my back was turned. The trees were older here, taller and closer together, blotting out the sky with a tangle of black-green needles. Their silence pressed in, thick as fog. When the official search parties moved on, we kept searching. Each ranger took a quadrant and a radio, a whiff of bravado hiding how it felt to be alone in the thicket. Marcus and Donna stuck together, clicking their walkie-talkies with code words and close jokes. I volunteered for the East Line, up past Ridge Marker 42, through switchbacks that wander toward the very bones of the Cascades. Maybe I thought, if I leaned in, the forest would show me what it had done with Spencer. It was there, halfway down the slope, that I first noticed the echoes. At first, it was just my own footsteps coming back to me too quickly, as if someone in thick boots followed just behind. But when I stopped, the echo stopped, or so I thought, until, once, when I bent to check a strange tuft of fur tangled in the brambles, I was certain I heard breathing. My own, ragged with nerves, or someone else's, deep and steady, close enough to stir the leaves. I tried the radio every half hour, mostly to reassure myself. The static came and went, sometimes cutting out Donna's voice in bits. "If you, near the lookout, don't linger." I made notes, left trail markers, and kept moving. It didn't help that the GPS behaved worse with every mile. The digital map would stutter, lines jumping across the screen, sometimes blinking out completely. I'd catch a flash of my own name where the waypoint should be, and then it would flicker back to coordinates that made no sense. At one point, I scrawled a backup map on my arm: North Fork, Big Rock, the old split cedar, like a rookie. Anything to keep my sense of direction. Midway through the third day, as storm clouds crowded off the peaks, Donna shared old stories over the radio. When I first started here, they told me to stay far from the crosses in the old ravine. Not ranger crosses, the logging days. They said the trees grew back wrong there, drank up whatever was left behind. I laughed lightly, trying to push away her nervous tone. "So you believe that stuff?" I asked. She replied, softer, "I believe a place changes for a reason. The old-timers always had codes, rules, superstition passed quietly among the staff and never with outsiders. The one they held closest: don't break the line. A line of stones, or posts, or an invisible border between safe and not. Sometimes it was marked on maps, sometimes it was just a gut feeling. Ridge Marker 4-2 was one of those places, always muddy, always overgrown, and always avoided after dusk. And that's where I found the thing that changed it all. It was late afternoon, the sun dragging in and out of sight through the limbs. I was stepping over a web of roots when something glittered just ahead. I followed, a compulsion, honestly, a subtle tug that left me dazed. There, almost hidden by generations of leaf fall, a stone circle rose from the moss. Maybe 4 feet wide, with rocks too even and old to be natural. Offerings, for lack of a better term, crowded the stones: animal bones, wind-fallen feathers, a child's hair ribbon blue with mildew, and a handful of coins too corroded to show their print. My first thought was, this shouldn't be here. I'd walked this circuit a dozen times and never seen it before. I crouched, running my fingers over the lichen-soft stones. Each one was carved faintly with marks, circles, triangles, a line through a circle. I pulled out my phone for a photo, but of course, the battery, full just 40 minutes ago, blipped to black. The chill that rose then had nothing to do with the failing light. That was when the pines began to hum, just at the edge of hearing, a vibration in the roots beneath my feet, so low I felt it in my bones before I caught the sound. I told myself it was distant thunder, wind in the upper boughs. But as I slowly stood, every hair on my arms rising, I realized I could almost make out a pattern, like breath drawn through hollow wood, or a song half remembered from a dream. I backed away, heart thudding, pacing my steps out toward the trail. My mind ran wild. I remembered a story Marcus drunkenly muttered once, about a logger who went missing in the 60s, last seen, singing to the trees. Was it just a story? Or was there something deeper the forest wanted us to forget? By the time I reached the trail again, the humming faded. I found a crude marking slashed into the nearest pine, a triangle inside a circle, Spencer's last route. Now there was no denying the pattern, and I cursed myself for not believing sooner. Back at the station, the atmosphere had changed. Radio chatter turned hesitant, as if we feared even our voices might draw something in. The weather turned colder, too, unseasonably sharp. That night, Marcus thumbed through the old logbook, referencing tales of lost time, of hikers who vanished only to return with no memory and cold, muddy feet. Donna asked, black humor covering the edge in her voice, "You ever heard the singing, kid?" I shook my head, but my throat was tight. Everyone left for home early. But I didn't go inside right away. Instead, I found myself drawn back toward the border of the trees, fighting the urge to walk the path one more time, to listen for the song I hadn't heard but could almost remember. That ancient circle, those offerings, the way the woods seemed to shift and swallow not just Spencer but a long line of stories before him. Even then, part of me wanted to know more. Maybe I was already in too deep. And as I finally locked the station door behind me, a gust of wind rustled over the porch, carrying a faint sound, half music, half warning, threading between the trunks I thought I knew so well. Looking back, I realized that was the point of no return. You tell yourself you're following procedure, you're out to check a boundary, log a sighting, protect the park. But after a certain hour, alone in that dense green, you realize you're not just crossing miles. You're crossing the line between sense and something much older, something the manuals and common sense left behind. That line, out past ridge marker 42, didn't just mark the edge of a trail. It marked the place where the world you trusted ran out. I started my next shift with a promise to keep clear of that hidden place, to stick with the daylight work, repairs, inventory, guiding campers clear of flood-prone spots. But dusk came strong and fast. Radio chatter was jumpy. Paula was out with a volunteer group, Marcus was on patrol on the opposite ridge, and Donna was out with the truck somewhere past the service road, gravel popping under her tired wheels. That left me covering the southern watch, with only the wind and the gathering dark for company. Evening in the summer woods changes everything. The green dulls, turns black at the edges, and shadows bleed across the earth, filling the hollows between roots. My flashlight's narrow beam felt useless, eaten by mist and motion. The deeper I walked, the more the pines pressed in. The usual trail benches, trail signs, all faded like memories of another world. There was just the path, and my boots, and the pulse of my own fear. My plan, if you could call it one, had been to double-check the old boundary clearing, maybe chalk new lines, then head back before dark. But my feet took me straight to where I'd found the stone circle. I realized my pace was quickening, compelled by a nervous hope, maybe Spencer would be there. Maybe I'd find evidence everyone else had missed. But when I arrived, the stones were gone. Not disturbed, gone. Only a faint depression in the moss remained, and the offerings, even the weathered ribbon, had vanished as if scooped away in a single motion. The ground looked freshly churned, the kind of rough, cold movement you see where a bear might dig for roots, but here the pattern was precise. It formed a crude spiral, almost hypnotic once you caught its path. Then I heard it. The singing. Not loud, barely audible even, like a human voice blurred by water, notes held too long, drifting on the wind. It was coming from farther in, where the forest thickened away from all human memory. Something in me screamed to run, to get help, to do anything but follow. And yet my legs moved of their own accord, one careful step after another. The forest went impossibly still, no jays, no frogs, not even the sound of my own breath. I felt suspended, every sense sharpened to the point of pain. The deeper I went, the more reality seemed to fall away. My watch stopped working. My compass needle slowly spun, wobbling as though it fought a magnetic storm. Pale, moth-like shapes flickered at the edge of my vision, no bigger than birds, glimmering white, then vanishing as soon as I tried to focus. More than once, I heard crunching footsteps, keeping pace, always just out of sight. I called out, once, for Spencer. The sound was swallowed instantly, as if the air itself had thickened into mud. Half mad with adrenaline, I turned back, only to realize I no longer recognized a single landmark. The pines grew impossibly close, arching in toward each other, their trunks marked with symbols that shimmered like old scars in half-light. Once or twice I thought I heard whispering, a slow, rhythmic rise and fall, as if the very ground ached with forgotten words. What broke through the panic was another voice. Not mine, not even quite human, but unmistakably a ranger's distress call, piped not through my radio but drifting through the trees. Need help, South Trailhead, can you hear me? Static, then a desperate, warbling plea I couldn't identify. I recognized the cadence, the clipped half-sentences, that was Spencer, or what was left of him. It was coming from deep in the thicket, through a tight web of fallen logs and brambles. I pushed through blindly, slashing my hands on branches. Every step felt wrong, gravity twisting, like walking through syrup. That song grew louder, not beautiful at all, but grinding and sorrowful. It seemed to press behind my eyes, pulsing with every heartbeat. A memory flashed through me, an old training video, warning about hypothermia-induced delirium, the way frostbite can make your own body turn against you. But this was no illness. Just beyond a cluster of blackened stumps, something moved. I saw a shape, ragged, upright, wearing torn ranger green. Its face was half-lit, half-eaten by shadow, mouth open as if singing, its eyes fixed beyond me into the trees. I called his name, once, twice. The shape didn't reply. Instead, it turned and drifted farther from the path, limbs moving all wrong, as if wood had replaced bone. Another voice joined in behind it, lower, a wailing harmony, and for a split second, I heard my own name, clear and unmistakable, echoing from the mouth of the woods. That broke the spell. I staggered back, boots tangling in roots. My flashlight bounced, catching a flash of silver, Spencer's hiking compass, cracked and slick with old mud, hanging from a branch at head height. I snatched it without thinking, the air around it suddenly cold as if all the heat had been vacuumed out. In that moment, everything snapped back, the path, the cold, the dread beneath my ribs. I spun and bolted, numbly following the only law that mattered: get out, get out, get out. When I broke through back to the safe trail, a boundary I must have crossed in the opposite direction, though I still have no memory of how, I collapsed on my knees, lungs tearing, heart jackhammering behind my sternum. My hands were cut and bleeding, a thick smear of mud streaked up my arms. The song was gone. The woods, once again, offered only silence. I staggered back to the station just as the first light broke through the trees. Donna found me huddled by the porch, pale and staring, Spencer's compass crushed tight in my fist. The radio buzzed behind her. A voice, flat and distorted, filtered over the signal. Just 3 words before the static drowned it out: don't let go. That's when something inside me shifted. No more explanations, no more pretending. We'd crossed the line the forest had drawn, and I wasn't sure there was any way back. If you spend enough time in the forest, you begin to see it like a living being, a vast mind, slow and ancient, watching from behind a green curtain. Every sound matters. Every broken branch, every silence. But after what happened that night, even that old understanding seemed shallow. I realized the woods didn't just hold secrets, they had intentions. And I was tangled up in them, whether I wanted to be or not. That morning after the song, I barely slept, an hour here, a half hour there, each time waking certain I'd heard someone walk past my window. I didn't tell the others what happened in detail. Donna pressed a mug of tea into my hands, concern dark under her sarcasm. Marcus just stared hard at the compass, then at me, his mouth set in a line. Even the air in the station changed, our jokes dried up, ritual greetings grew clipped and wary, everyone glancing at the trees as though they were listening in. But part of being a ranger, maybe the hardest part, is finishing what you start. And the more I tried to ignore the pull of the woods, the stronger it became. By midday, I was half convinced I'd imagined the whole ordeal: exhaustion, grief, stress. But then I found the ribbon. It was the same faded child's ribbon from the first stone circle, stuck to my jacket sleeve, stiff with damp and old with mildew. I hadn't picked it up, couldn't remember even brushing close enough for it to catch. I held it, shivering, turning it over and over in my hand. It was a sign, the kind you learn to fear if you've worked too long out here. I knew, with a cold certainty, I wasn't done. Every logical part of me screamed to leave. Just walk out, hand in my badge, let the bureaucrats and the legend mongers fight it out. But I couldn't. It wasn't guilt, not just. It was a feeling like unfinished business, like there was an answer hidden in those pines and I was obligated to bring it back, whatever the cost. That afternoon, I found Marcus staring at the incident board, red eyes and shaking hands betraying how rattled he was. He didn't say a word, just pointed to the new note Donna had tacked up: West Perimeter, strange cairns rebuilt overnight. Harmless but worth checking. At that, I knew we were thinking the same thing. Donna caught us in the act, eyes sharp, and said, "If either of you is going out there alone, you're fired." I should have listened. But as dusk bled into the sky, I laced up my boots, stuffed Spencer's compass in my pocket with the ribbon, and left my radio crackling on the porch. I didn't tell anyone the real reason I was heading out, just mumbled about marking the north fence. Donna shot me a look, but she said nothing. The air was colder than usual, the kind of chill that clings to your skin even after the sun goes down. I walked quickly, then more slowly, drawn toward the part of the park that always seemed to twist away from me. Trails that once felt familiar suddenly didn't line up, and the ground underfoot became spongy, sucking at my boots. The forest was so quiet it ached. After half an hour, I found the remains of the circle again, half hidden beneath piles of rotted leaves. The spiral pattern had spread, etched in deep gouges through the moss and mud, impossible to mistake for the work of animals. Fine, pale lines radiated out, reaching toward trees that bore those triangles and circles I'd seen before, now countless, ringed with black resin that stuck to my gloves like blood. This time I felt movement before I saw it. A faint vibration, the air suddenly charged. Light bent, no other way to explain it, slanting sideways between the trunks so the shadows hung in unnatural shapes. And there, at the base of a tree older and larger than the rest, I saw a rough gap cloven into its roots. No ordinary hollow. This was an entrance, wide enough for a grown man to crawl inside, rimmed in stone. Inside, darkness pulsed, warm and sweet, not damp or rotting as you'd expect, but almost inviting. I hesitated, but memories of Spencer, of the song, of all those years of not asking questions, forced me closer. I reached into my pocket and gripped the compass, a cold anchor against the dizziness. The song was louder now, not a tune exactly, but a vibration, like wind whistling through bone. Against every instinct, I crawled forward, scraping my palms raw, ducking my head beneath the twisted arch. The world narrowed to that tunnel, and time seemed to pull apart. I must have crawled for minutes, maybe hours, felt roots wind against my legs like slow hands, then suddenly burst into a cavern hollowed inside the trunk. At its center stood a pile of woven objects, dolls from grass and hair, feathers pinned in rings of bone and stone, bits of cloth and plastic, half dissolved by damp. Around the walls, faint marks sprawled outward like fingerprints. And in the heart of it all, something that nearly broke my mind, a figure, human but not, its contours shifting with the torch's beam. It seemed grown from the very wood itself, hunched, faceless, mouth stretched open in that silent, grinding song. For a long moment I was too paralyzed to do anything. Memory surged, every story, every warning scribbled in the book, every fear I'd ever laughed away with the others around the fire. The thing in the heart of the woods was not a ghost or a legend. It was presence ancient, embodied by the forest, feeding on stories, on fear, on songs that wanderers and missing souls have left behind. Behind it, I saw another face, no, not a face, but the pale suggestion of one. Ragged, sooty, with ranger green glinting dully in the torchlight. Spencer. Or, what was left of him, eyes hollow, lips twitching as if trying to speak. I stumbled, gagging, the world spinning. I managed a hoarse whisper of Spencer's name. He looked at me, no, through me, and the song faltered, a harsh ripple through the roots. He reached out a hand, and in that moment, something shifted, the story snapped. The entity shuddered, its mouth contorting, the song turning frantic and feral. It lunged, not physically, but in a way that made the air ripple and reality tug at the edges. I toppled backwards, scraping my heels, the compass flaring cold as ice in my grip. I don't know what compelled me, maybe some foolish instinct, maybe rage, maybe pity. I threw the compass into the rotting mound at the figure's feet and with the other hand, thrust the ribbon toward Spencer. For the briefest second, the world paused. The song died. Spencer's hand closed on the ribbon, and something like wind billowed through the cavern, shaking dust and feathers loose and plunging everything into darkness. I ran, no plan, no grace, scrambling back the way I came, snatching at roots and dragging myself through the narrow cut until my shoulders bruised and my hands ran slick with sap. Behind me, the singing rose again, now fractured, a disharmony echoing through the ground. The darkness seemed to chase me, but as I burst back out onto the moss, the woods seemed to pull away, as if the forest itself exhaled in relief. I gasped, staring back at the tree. The hollow had vanished, sealed shut as if it never existed. The moon was high, the wind loud, but everything else, the song, the shadows, even Spencer's face, was gone. Exhausted, battered, half-mad, I staggered back through the trees, never looking behind me, the memory of that faceless figure imprinted on my mind like a burn. It wasn't just one lost soul or a buried secret. It was an endless hunger, a story that kept rewriting itself, always needing a new ending, always needing someone to listen and someone to be lost. Back at the edge of the woods, I collapsed to my knees, weeping, maybe for Spencer, maybe for myself, or maybe for all the names written in invisible ink inside the bones of these old pines. I'd found the secret the forest had tried to keep. And I was no longer sure I wanted to keep it. When you spend a night in the woods running from something you can't name, daylight feels like a mercy, thin, golden lie you're grateful for. The pines that pressed and twisted all through the night now stood still and gentle, green as childhood in the morning sun. Early birds sang at the tree line, and the wind was just wind, crisp and clean. If I hadn't seen the marks on my skin and mud on my ruined boots, I would have told myself it was all a fever dream. But I was changed. I staggered to the trailhead on trembling legs, covered in scratches and bruises, leaf bits stuck in my hair and blood on my palms from where I'd clawed at roots and sharp stone. My throat was raw, my hands still shaking. I got as far as the ranger station porch before my knees just gave out. Donna found me. She took one look at my face, and her own went white. She bundled me inside without a word, pressing water, a scratchy blanket, and just that tight, set look in her jaw. No questions, not at first. I couldn't speak anyway. My tongue was thick, my whole body thrumming with the throb of deep exhaustion and something colder, anchored in my brain like a secret command, do not ever go back. Once I found words, I tried to explain. Parts of it, enough truth, I hoped, to satisfy the urgent need for a report without confessing how little I understood. I told them I'd found where the forest swallowed up the lost, some sort of old cave, probably just an animal den, and Spencer's trail ended cold. Officially, that's where the story stops, search terminated. Possible wildlife involvement. No remains recovered. I left out the song, the figure, the taste of old dirt and older fear. Marcus watched carefully as I signed the report, his eyes darting from my bandaged palms to the woods outside the window. "Anything we missed?" he asked, quiet. I shook my head. "No. But I don't think anyone should patrol solo for a while." A pause. "Anything you want to put in the book?" Donna asked, voice just above a whisper. "No," I told her. "I think the book knows enough for now." They didn't push. Everyone in that room had their own ghosts written between the lines of those silent pages. After the paperwork, I tried to call the regional office, get a formal shutdown on the northern perimeter, maybe even request backup from search and rescue. The line worked at first, then faded to a static so dense it rattled the speaker. Every time I tried to explain the urgency, I was told, "These things happen." They promised to look into it, to send up fresh eyes before fall, but didn't sound eager. The sense of being managed, boxed out, of something being quietly covered over instead of solved, was unmistakable. Before I left the office, I checked the incident file. The confidential one, stamped and sealed. 2 new sheets had been slid in quietly, not by Donna or Marcus, in a carefully neutral hand, unexplained vocalizations. Ranger returned from patrol in distressed state, evidence of environmental hazard. Area closed pending further review. No mention of ancient markers. No mention of songs. In town, I carried myself like someone twice my age. I tried to sleep, but dreams twisted fiercely. When I pressed my phone to my ear at night, sometimes I'd catch a faint trace of static, carrying those same 3 echoed words, "Don't. Let. Go." For weeks, the forest seemed to retreat back to being a postcard scene, a calendar photo. The tourists returned, and all reports were as mundane as misprinted maps and lost hats. People in town glanced at me with a new wariness, as if I'd come back with something stamped on my forehead, like I was marked. Paula brought by a homemade pie. "Time to rest up," she said. "Sometimes the woods just need time, you know." I nodded, but the words rang hollow. There was no rest. Only a wider circle around what had happened. Every so often the wind would shift and bring the scent of rain and moss, and in that moment I'd feel the urge to run, to check the tree line for survivors, or for something coming out. I tried to warn the brass in Olympia, but their answers were always the same: hazard assessment ongoing. Area will be posted. Thank you for your diligence. My own words receded into silence. I started to feel invisible. I couldn't get rid of the thought that something fundamental had changed, that the woods and I understood each other now. Or maybe that something from down in that root hollow was still following me, tracing my steps. Sometimes at night I'd hear a sharp rap at the windows, 3 slow knocks, then nothing. Once, while stopping at the local market for coffee, I caught sight of someone in an old Green Ranger jacket. At first, I thought it was Spencer, come back, but it was just some out-of-towner, lost in the aisle. My heart hammered uselessly for a long, shaking minute. And yet, for all the hurts and fears, I was alive. I'd gotten out. I tried to tell myself that was enough, that the rest was for someone else to worry about. But I knew, deep down, that nobody ever left the woods entirely. Part of you stays caught. And part of it, part of it follows you home. That's what I brought out of the dark with me. A secret I'd never really be able to share, and a certainty that dawn wasn't the end. It was just the thinnest slice of safety between two turns of the world. I wondered if I'd ever sleep with the window open again. And deep in the early light, I heard one last echo, just a faint, half-remembered phrase, rolling through the pines. I won't let go. But I didn't know if it was Spencer's voice. Or my own. In the weeks after I left the woods behind, the world flattened out. Days lost texture, replaced by routine, chopping groceries, answering small-town questions with shrugs, trying to let the clean sounds of civilization beat back the hush of the forest that still echoed in my bones. People, even friends, spoke quietly around me, and when they asked about the disappearance, the investigation, I offered the practiced lines, "We did everything we could." It's a dangerous place when the weather turns. I became a cautionary tale, a walking warning in a ranger jacket that suddenly felt like a costume I'd outgrown. Sleep became a negotiation. Some nights I'd crash hard, exhaustion pinning me, but each morning I woke braced for something I couldn't name. Other nights I drifted just below the surface, turning at every creak in the floorboards, convinced for a brief, chilly instant that I'd hear faint singing through the screen window or a slow, deliberate knock at the door. When headlights passed too slow on the road, I'd sit up, heart racing, and check every lock, even though the nearest set of pines was a mile off. Brittany, the young seasonal, left early. Donna said she just needed a change of scenery. Marcus started working more admin shifts, trading patrols for the clipboard and the endless hum of the office heater. I saw Paula in the grocery one evening, hands full of canned soup, a tired smile barely hanging on. "Heard you might take some vacation for once," she said, nudging my arm. I tried to smile back. "Maybe head south," I joked. "Desert, nothing taller than my knee." She laughed, but even her laughter seemed washed out by the rain clattering on the windows. At the ranger station, an unspoken truce settled in. No talk about the boundary trails or the old rules. The book lay closed under Donna's desk, pages bristling with colored tabs, a private little graveyard for secrets best kept unwritten. Once or twice, I found myself reaching for it on impulse, only to pause and let my hand drift past. Things in the park itself almost seemed to mend. Fewer strange reports reached us. The birds returned, huddled together in noisy, brilliant flocks. Wildlife seemed less skittish. But I never once walked toward ridge marker 42. None of us did. Even the maintenance crew rerouted the trail, officially, for erosion control, but nobody missed the way folks avoided that whole stretch come evening. And yet, every so often you'd see a sign that nothing was quite right. New rangers, young, curious, still full of questions, would start humming to themselves in the break room, a tune that set my teeth on edge even if they didn't realize they were doing it. Once, while shutting a window at dusk, Marcus caught a reflection, his own face, blurred at the edges, staring back with an expression he swore he wasn't making. I started spending time with the oldest ranger left in town, old Pete, retired nearly 20 years. He'd seen the forests burned, flooded, built over, grown back again. When I finally got up the nerve to ask about the stories, he nodded, rocked back in his chair, and said, "Every place has its own memory. Sometimes it's old enough that it needs to be fed." I tried to laugh, but he just looked at me, steady, like he knew exactly where I'd been. "You got out," Pete said. "Don't go looking too close at the places that call your name. Even when you think you're safe." I stopped walking alone at dusk. I stopped listening to the wind, because every now and then it almost resolved into words. Most days, I was fine. But sometimes, after a hard rain, or when the fog curled low through the valley, I'd feel the pressure again, something behind the eyes, a gentle tug as if a string still tied me back to the heart of the pines. In the world outside the park, I couldn't talk about any of it. Friends from my old life didn't want to hear. I tried therapy, but language fell apart the minute I tried to describe the hum, the dream logic, the thing that had peered through Spencer's empty eyes. Nobody wants horror in their daily bread. I missed him. I missed the version of myself that thought all mysteries had solutions, that believed no place could truly go unaccounted for. Sometimes I stared at the stars, at the ridgeline, daring myself to walk out and listen, just one more time, to whatever sang in those old, broken places. I never took a step. But then, late one evening as I was closing up the back office, I heard humming, the exact, aching melody from that night in the heart of the forest, drifting down the hallway. I froze. There, on the other side of the door, was Sarah, one of our youngest hires, just stacking forms and checking boxes by the copier. She turned, startled to see me, and stopped humming. "Sorry. Just a tune from the radio, I think. Kind of sticks in your head, you know." I nodded, masking the chill in my voice, "Maybe stick to podcasts instead. You want to believe there's an end, a moment when the past is truly past. The truth is, some songs just keep finding new voices. And the forest, old as it is, finds new ways to call back what's lost. When I fall asleep now, sometimes I hear the hum, quiet, patient, threaded deep beneath the surface of regular life. I never answer. But I'm always listening, for the day I hear someone else reply. If you've stuck with me this far, maybe you're hoping for clarity, a final answer, some neat border drawn between the ordinary and the impossible. But you won't get that from me. Not anymore. I used to think every trail had a destination, every search a conclusion. 7 years in these woods cured me of that. Here's what I know now: some places keep their own memory, and they are patient. Our stories are fuel for them. Our absence, even more so. I see it in small ways, everywhere. The station logs that always have one more page added overnight. The new hires in their crisp uniforms, already learning which stories to laugh off and which to leave alone. The edge of the forest creeping closer to the ranger cabin every spring, even as maintenance swears they're cutting it back. Last week, I found a stone I'd never seen before, deep gray and carved, buried among the ferns by the staff parking lot. Wasn't there the day before, I'm sure of it. I left it where it was. Sometimes I dream I'm back on the line, not lost yet, not marked. I wake up with that pressure on my chest, the sense that someone is humming just out of range. I have to check the locks. Sometimes, I find pine needles on my floor, tracked in from nowhere. Once, I found an old compass, not mine, it had been missing since Spencer's time, lying on the porch at sunrise, pointing deeper into the trees. Pete was right, don't look too close at the places that call your name. We all have places we're supposed to avoid. If you're lucky, you'll grow old never knowing exactly why. Some folks never ask, others never get to tell. So now, when visitors come with their phones and their bear spray and their borrowed courage, I hand them a map, and I tell them what every ranger learns: sooner or later, stay on the marked trails. Leave before dusk. If you hear something singing, keep walking. Never, ever answer when the woods call your name. But they never really listen. There's always someone who has to see for themselves, someone who can't resist a path that looks a little too wild, or a story that sounds too strange not to follow. And the forest waits. It always waits. Hungry. Patient. Older than anything a signpost can measure. Maybe you think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. But if this recording still exists, maybe you or someone after you will think twice. Maybe you'll realize the pattern every decade, another name, another page in that unofficial log. Every year, the song in the trees finds a new verse. This is my warning, you don't ever come back the same, if you come back at all. So if you visit our park in Washington State, and the air goes cold, and the wind brings you a tune you can't quite place, walk faster. Keep your head down. Hope you're not next. And if you ever find yourself humming the melody, stop. Don't let it take root. Because the forest chooses who it wants. And once it has you, it never truly lets go.